All right, it's been a while, but not that long. And you all possibly won't see me as often, but that's just going to be for a little bit. But let's stick to the topic. Okay, I'm going to add some disclaimers really quickly for those of you who might actually come on live. I'm going to give some house rules. Okay, I do not acknowledge ignorance. Okay, so I'm going to put that out there straight away. I do not acknowledge ignorance. I do not engage with combative energy. So, folks, who come in with an agenda, okay? If you want to get any type of acknowledgement from me, you'll come into this live with respect and honor to who I am and what I speak on. If that is not you, you will be ignored, and chances are I will delete and block any comments. I may screenshot them for my records moving forward in the future for the cyber stalking and cyber bullying and harassment. Okay. This live is going to be discussing, so what is covert or passive aggressive bullying? And specifically, we're going to just talk about, and again, viewer discretion is advised. This is for information purposes, reflection purposes, and take of it what you will. Okay, the beauty of for those of you like myself, if you're in the US, the beauty of being in the US, and then just for those of us in social media, the beauty of all of that is if we don't like and agree with something, we can all go on our merry way. That is the beauty. Okay, and if you are in the US, well, you have, constitutional lefts, rights, ups, downs, in, outs, ordinances, whatever you want to call it, that gives you, okay, permission. That's not that you need it, but that's permission to have your own opinion and your own view and to express it. Okay. So with that being said, life can be simple, but the only energies that I will acknowledge on any of my platforms are those who are stepping in with honor. Otherwise, it's almost going to be like I don't even see you, but I do. Okay. Specifically, I want to talk about religious and spiritual abuse and bring the question of what does that look like? Because those are just words. We hear, a bunch of words. And in the technological age, information age that we're in, anybody could copy and paste words, phrases, sayings. It's easy to do. Okay? So, but what is that? Not everybody is experiencing this. And this conversation is, believe it or not, it's not meant for negativity. But guess what? If we didn't address real issues in this realm, in this life as we know it, because we're afraid that it comes off as negative, we wouldn't have a lot of the solutions that we have either, would we? If someone wasn't bold enough to bring a topic forward even when it's uncomfortable and inconvenient, somebody had to. That's how most of the programs that we have were birthed. Just saying. Okay. Now, again, if you come in honor and you respect the house, meaning the hostess, you'll get my attention. Otherwise, you won't. But I do invite, or should I say, let me rephrase that. I encourage folks who are really sincere and legit and kind of really want to talk about it from an open space, okay? You don't already have your preset notions. People with that, they're not interested in any real change and resolve. They come in with their preset, already established. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so let's play with that. What does religious and spiritual bullying look like? And when we hear the word bullying, what do we think of when we hear bully? Okay, most of us when we're here, and I'm just talking right now, and then whoever comes in, most of us when we hear the term bully, some of us are going to go back to school. We're going to have some reflections of grade school, middle school, high school, and it's going to look something like either it's ourself or somebody else being put in a locker, pushed around, right? Those are the images that most of us are going to get. Somebody being put in a locker, pushed around, you know, yelled at, hit, or something like that. Most of us are going to have those as a point of reference. But those are overt style versions of a bully. That's overt, meaning it's obvious. You can visually see it. If you're in the vicinity of where the bullying is taking place, then it is an overt act. Most of us go physical, no? We hear the term bullying, and most of us see somebody, some big, aggressive, somebody growling. You know, that's what we equate bullying to. Somebody that's in your face, somebody that is obnoxious. Like, these are all connotations of what most of us naturally equate bullying to. So let's even go down the journey of pondering, expanding on that. Because see, in the world of adulting it, you know, and what even adult abusers begin to realize, depending on their condition, is that you got to play this game, and that won't be widely accepted. So even if they are, you know, so it starts to become covert in nature in order to have a semblance of blending in with society, or having a semblance of notoriety or piety or decency. So it has to come out in another fashion. But let's get to the heart of what a bully is. We're going to get to the heart of abuse. We're going to get to the heart of a bully, what it is, okay, and where it's coming from. When we, you know, if you take the Y away from bully, you have bull, B-U-L-L, you have bull. And this is just me. I don't think I've seen this anywhere, but this is just me referencing. You take the Y out of bully, you have bull. And what is a bull, and what do they do? Similar to a ram. What do they do with their horns? You know, if you think about the animal bull and the bull fights and all that, they have their head. So look at, that's their intelligence, that's their attitude, their thoughts, their beliefs, their way, their mindset, their control, their authority. And they ram it into the opponent, whoever the other bull is, who they perceive as their opponent, who they perceive as, whether it's accurate perception or not, who they perceive as someone in their way. And in their way could mean anything, in the way of how they have managed to build their lives, in the way of, you know, a whole lot of things. They may feel like this person's secret competition. Maybe they feel like that person's in the way of what they've always believed. And if what they've always believed ends up falling and shattering, that's going to shatter life as they know it. That's going to shatter how they've built themselves up. That's going to shatter all that stuff. So that energy then bulldozes that they feel is a threat, even if they're not full conscious aware. Okay? Bullying. Someone forcing their way. Bully. Play with it. Listen, you guys, this is not meant to be heavy. This is just giving us space. We can put a pin, listen, we all can put a pin in our stuffiness, and then we can go back to it after it's okay. We can, there's no mind police. Well, I don't even know, should I say that? There's no mind police, that's, has the governments to be over you to make you agree and believe, and so we can put a pin in what we already have and then just give ourselves space to expand and think. That's not making it complicated. That's called growth, because we can always go back, okay, to whatever it is we want to hold on to. It's okay. Now, a bully. If we were to reflect in school, the bullies were, sometimes they were jocks, sometimes they were popular people. It just depends. But everybody basically kisses the bully's ass, looks up to them for whether it's their looks, connections, whatever the case may be. And they blow smoke up the bum of the bully because everybody is scared to say anything different. Because saying something different could come with, some kind of an abuse. You get put in a locker, you get whatever, okay, the case may be. You get a wedgie, you get your lunch money taken, whatever the case may be. But in adulthood, what does bullying look like? What does covert abuse even look like? And I want to go on the record to say that I believe that sometimes folks aren't conscious aware that that is what they're doing, but the only reason why they're not conscious aware is because it's their own conditioning and programming, and they themselves adhere to abuse culture. So even there are people who are conscious aware of the fact that they're toxic and abusive and intrusive and being a bully, and then there's folks who aren't, because based on their conditioning and their programming and their systems of beliefs and all those things, they don't perceive their behavior as such. And that's why I want to talk about this kind of stuff. Not for the purpose of harping and dwelling, but for the purpose of change. If someone in high school that was being bullied, if they just took on the notion, just shut up and be quiet, don't focus on that, focus on the good, move on, move away from that. If they continue on like that, they'll continue on in a cycle of that until they face off with what this is that continues to follow them around. Because it's not a matter of them just moving on and being positive. It's a matter of them addressing what seems to continue to follow them around. That's not them harping. That's not them being negative. That's them addressing something. Religious dogma and abuse often looks like this. Every time something happens to an individual In some cases, it's something that was even wished on the individual, prayed onto the individual, gossiped onto the individual, and then in some rare cases, even actual physical manipulation and sabotage. Okay? In the background, as to teach that person a lesson from veering off or no longer agreeing with said system. That's actually abuse. In some cases, it's downright illegal. It just depends on how it's manifesting and to what degree. So it looks like someone, now we're talking about religious abuse here. We're going to break down, a couple of areas here. And again, this is just something to think about. This is what growth looks like. We can't be afraid of that. At least, let me rephrase that. We can, but it doesn't serve. Not in a high vibrational sense. Religious abuse looks like someone is in anybody, and I mean anybody, man, woman, young, old, anybody in a dire situation. They're experiencing a hardship, they're experiencing a loss, they're experiencing a tragedy, they're experiencing something. In some cases, they're experiencing some injustices and manipulation that has fostered some of their situations. And when they seek out ways of rebuilding from that, from professional, governmental, professional, friendships, whomever, when they seek out the things that are supposed to be established, okay, to serve their population even, then they're given parables, subliminal messages, all insinuating in some cases that you are in this situation because you are not on the path. Or this is just to be some kind of testimony. Okay, we're still in abuse culture and this obsession with suffrage. Okay? No matter how we spin it, but this is what that said population face. Whether or not these individuals, entities, or groups realize it or not, that is abuse. It's also ignorance and presumption. It's adding insult to injury to whatever these populations are going through that are already possibly traumatized by one ignorant person after the next, by one insensitive, lacking empathy person after the next, by one predator after the next. Also implying when people are in such situations that they're not contributing members of society or that they have not contributed. That's also abuse. It's also ignorance, and it's also presumption. Because it's adding insult. How they don't know your life. They don't know. You see that assumption? And where that assumption is, where is it coming from? What is the basis and the premises of that? They don't know. They don't know how you could have helped and served humanity, maybe even far surpassing what they think they're doing. And it's not, listen, it's not even a matter of comparison. That's a part of the toxic culture. It's not even a matter of that. It's the simple fact of implying that folks that are going through some kind of situation, not having real depth or knowledge or understanding as to the real reason why. To assume that there are these people that are just consuming and they're not contributing. Maybe they've been contributing. Maybe if people would have stopped interfering folks' lives out of their ignorance, we don't know. Where people could be. This too is abuse. Folks aren't trained or as trained. To assume that somebody did something to deserve misfortune is abuse. To presume that it's because of a religious, spiritual, philosophical view is abuse and presumption. To take that opportunity when the individuals are in moments of vulnerability, pain, and suffering to soapbox and perpetuate an agenda is abuse. That's abuse. And it's insensitive, and it's also kind of erroneous because, again, it's all based on them. There are real things happening in the world to people, injustices that has absolutely nothing to do with they're on the wrong path. And it also has nothing to do with them supposedly forever continually on a hamster wheel of some kind of a weird sicko. That's to keep people okay with abuse. I'm gonna suffer. What parent? I'm sorry. And I'm not sorry. I cancel that. I have no interest in torturing my son to prove his love for me. I have no interest in that. I have absolutely 0% interest in that. I have 0% on letting him be raped, fondled, in order to prove he that mofo. I have no interest in doing that to my son. I have 0% as a regular bleeding being. I have 0% interest in torturing my kid. To prove his loyalty to me. Or to show him off in front of one of my competitors who I'm trying to prove I'm better than. I also have no interest in torturing him because he grows up to have a different view than me. I don't tie that into his love for me. I don't tie that into his respect for me, him needing to I have no interest in letting any random, weirdo in the world have at them the way they wish. That's insensitive to my son, isn't it? I would be under scrutiny by everybody. In fact, you would be too. In fact, we are. We're under scrutiny by every failure that we have with our children. Every bad season, every situation, we're under scrutiny by Judgy Judgersons from Judgensvilles for not being able, right, according to their presumption. Yet, We're supposed to be okay and willing to suffer year after year, day after day, unjustly, having to perform and tap dance for kibbles and bits for the bare minimum. That's abuse culture. And I accept that there are some people who will never see past what they see things as. But this is why I'm speaking of it in the manner that I am, where it's just downright abuse. Listen, I've been in several different seasons of my life. I've been on top, I've been in the middle, I've been at the low. Folks will never really know. But one thing I can say is, even on the, I'm going to say air quote, the so-called mountaintop seasons I've had, times where I did either reach out to help people or people reached out to me and I helped people, or whatever the case may have been, and whatever my opinions of them were, whether they were on the path that I was on or not at that time, or whatever lifestyle, at the end of the day, when I look back, what I see is my conduct honoring people. Exploiting vulnerability is abuse. Exploiting vulnerability is abuse. Meaning somebody is in a situation and they're trying to get help for the situation. It's not always everything that we presume things to be. And it's not the place for that. See, true assistance is detached, because if you are on the side of the helper, not the helpee, then it ain't about you as the helper. Ain't about you. It's not about you getting a preach moment in. It's not about you getting validation from the person that you're helping. It's not about you. If you're the helper. If you're the helper, it's not about you getting a lick back. If you're the helper, it's not about you proving you're just as smart as the helpee. If you're the helper, it's not about your belief systems and your perceptions and it needs to stay basic. It needs to stay very basic, which is 0% to do with one's personal, philosophical, religious, and spiritual bents. It needs to say basic, and sensitive, because as a helpers, organic, they're more sensitive in nature. They're sensitive to the population that they're serving. And not just sensitive in a sense of, I'm going to give them something. Sensitive, considerate. You don't know their life. You don't know what kind of trauma they've lived through. Maybe they're tired of preachy people, one after the next, dangling carrots so that they can get a soapbox to perpetuate their abuse. Sensitive to somebody else's wants, needs, somebody else's rights, sovereignty, somebody else's. They may not be that. They may not want you doing that. They're a person. That should have absolutely nothing to do with service providing when those that are in the helps field or those who are deciding out of the so-called kindness of their heart. Also, it ain't always about what somebody don't know how to do. These are all presumptuous things. Some of these folks may know how to meditate and still themselves better than the helper. We don't know what people have undergone and for how long, to what magnitude. We don't know what it is that they are embodying and practicing outside of the situation. I spoke with somebody. We talked about simplicity. And the irony is, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Because see, simplicity in basics means that you take away your own judgments. You remove the complexity of your own nature, your own views, your own choices, your own opinions. You move that aside, because that has potential to further complicate a matter. And when somebody is hurting, see, this is what I feel that lacks with humanity. This is me. This is my own personal opinion. I didn't say people lack giving. I've encountered a lot of folks. Let me rephrase it. I have certainly encountered people with generosity. Okay. But when I say empathy and sympathy, I mean, I think of my son and people like him, and just, I've seen some things play out that shows me the lack of empathy and compassion. If somebody's hurting, they don't need to hear our shit. I'm gonna say that for the record. That's not an opportunity, because we could be sorely wrong and we're adding insult to injury, and we don't really, that's out of the scope, it's out of our scope. We wonder why some of the things are going the way they go, because some of us are touching stuff we possibly shouldn't be touching. Because we're dealing with the traumatized population and we want to get on a soapbox. It ain't no room for that. What is abuse? What is bullying? I'm encouraging the world to take another look at it. And better still, to take a better look at covert style. Because see, this happens in families, this happens in business, this happens in close relationships. If you don't kiss my ass, I'm a this. If you don't think how I think, I'm a this. If you don't believe I believe, I'm a this. Or I'm a covertly sabotage you or wish you ill or talk down on you and convince. It's still abuse. Also, trying to dictate and control how people express and show up in the world, that's also abuse. Mind you, take this with a grain of salt. We're not talking about legitimate courses and classes and etiquette, because we do have those things to teach people who maybe, if they want to learn about how to have a proper interview and how to conduct business, and that I get. That I get. But there are folks who get activated, triggered by people showing up in their authenticity or their confidence. Why is that? Or the need to put people in their place. I'm going to say that. To put people in their place because they feel like, well, they're going through something and they really, this addiction to so-called humbling people. Where does that come from? That's abuse too. What's that obsession about? And often these are the same people who they can't smell their own poop. They can't, nose blindness. They can't smell their own arrogance. They don't think they have it. Whether it's under the guise of God, religion, spirituality, or anything and everything in between. That's abuse. And guess what? We're not taught that, are we? Especially a lot of us older, I'm an older generation, and then, the generation I'm from, the area that I'm from. The culture that I'm from has inherited abuse culture as leadership, as love. Think about this. Play with this. Somebody's hurting, and then the person turns it into about them. I've had some experiences here recently that really opened my eyes to a lot. Not everybody should be in the helps industry, and that's just my opinion. Because they got too many personal inside stuff that makes them susceptible to possibly abuse or intrude on the population that they're supposed to be serving. Sound a little bit narcissistic, doesn't it? Stuff lacking warmth. See, I'm starting to pay attention to all things now. "38 minutes in, I gotta get going." This is just like I said, this is whoever lands on this video at some point, okay? You may be surprised. Maybe this enlightens you about your own behavior. Maybe it enlightens you about those that are around you, and maybe it shines a light on what you've been experiencing. Who knows? And see, guess what? And something like this may impact lives. It's all about perception, isn't it? That's why we have to define. Folks don't know. The way you impact may be very different than theirs, and vice versa. We don't need approval for that. And just because they have a template of how something is relevant for them, it doesn't mean it has to be yours. See, that's the stuff I give full attention to highlight. Because that is what projection is. As helpers, or those who consider themselves in the helps and the service industry and all that stuff, when we show up in this world for folks, we show up and it's about them. The end of the story. That's it. It's not about talking to them about how wonderful we are and what we got going on and how, that's us turning it into indirectly. So you see that? Still looking for validation from the ones we're serving. I've helped people plenty. The world wouldn't know it. I've helped people plenty in times on top, and I wasn't sitting across from them preaching, talking about how wonderful my ministry was. I wasn't sending them a subliminal message about how I didn't humiliate them. I didn't highlight, didn't presume that they didn't know how to do some basics, or I didn't try to dictate and control how they spoke. Narcs do that. I didn't take offense because listen, I used to be a big hugger in the day. I used to be a big hugger in ministry and just in different things. It was just a part of it, But guess what? I didn't take personal and offense when somebody didn't want one. I didn't need to have a meeting about it. I didn't need to have a conversation about it. I didn't flip out like, oh my God, they're so different. Well, because this ain't about me. I'm so-called the helper. It ain't about me. It ain't about me feeling better. It ain't about me getting the validation from that person. I don't know their life. That's maturity. Because see, when you're doing something detached like that, then it ain't about you in the first freaking place. Ain't about you in the first place. Oh, I tried to give him a hug. Well, it ain't about you. We don't know. Sometimes folks get tired of people playing in their face. You know how many folks they done had sit there playing? See, when you're in the helps industry for real, these are things you got to keep in the forefront of your mind. The helpees shouldn't be having to manage the helper's emotions. You know how many people that played in the helpees' faces in this world. Smiling. Acting like they care, only to turn out to have an agenda or to disappoint or to waste their time, in some cases to betray. Only to catch these very same people gossiping or being insensitive to their children or the disabled. Some folks get tired of the BS. Because it becomes, not only are they going through what they're going through, now they got to manage the so-called helpers' immaturity, emotional pettiness, and need for validation. So sometimes the helpies are not funny style, sometimey, wishy-washy, Jekyll Hyde. Sometimes they are trying to discern and give ample space to see who's who, who's legit and who isn't. Who's going to project onto them, presume things, lack boundaries, lack respect. Sometimes that's what it is. The helpee is already in their loop of things and they're tired of the dance. They're tired of the whole, okay, I got to validate the helper. It's backwards. Somebody's going to say, everybody want to feel appreciated, Brandy. I agree. But I also agree that depending on what kind of industries we're in, we may need to learn how to get some things in unique ways if we're going to become abusive and project and insist when we're dealing with a population that may already be burnt out. And you're just another face that sits in front of them. Just like the helpers often get their judgments presuming that everybody coming in is gaming, right? Entitled gamers, with an attitude, blah, blah, blah. But as a professional or a paraprofessional, the greater responsibility is on the professional. A lot of these folks get the runaround, they get lied to, they get people picking them apart, they get people looking at them like they don't know how to say their ABCs because they're in a situation. There's an undertone and an unspoken undertone and judgment that this is just simply to do with mismanagement of life. Is that the case sometimes? Absolutely. But not all the time. And there's a time and a place for it too. I made a joke with several people and groups and organizations over the last month or so. And I meant it. When it comes to all these programs and all these various things that's supposed to be to serve the people. And listen, I don't come with just, I believe I'm solution based. You're not about to rebuild and reform nothing and nobody if you don't deal with that first block on Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs with honor. Simple as that. And I said with honor for a reason, because sometimes, folks can create like this imprisonment type of situation and vibe, and that still applies. The feeling of safety and security is not just the technicality of a roof. We need to look deeper into that too. Because there's an undercurrent of you're in a safe space. There's trustworthiness about that space. Also air, comfort, proper, exercise, movement, and even, I'm going to even add this for flavor. all encompassing. If you have a belief system of practice, if you're spiritual, if you're religious, if you're agnostic, if you're nothing and everything in between, but whatever these things are, within reason, within safety, precaution, and reason, of course, there should be space for that. Not mockery, ridicule, different treatment, and withholding, because withholding is abuse as well. I said a mouthful on that, huh? Withholding is abuse as well. That's something else we're not taught. I'm going to withhold because I'm going to teach this person a lesson. I don't like the way they think. I'm going to withhold resources, options, because I'm just giving that as an example. I'm not saying that the person would say it, but their thought process and how they come up with their decision and the actions that they take or that they don't take. I don't like what this person, I don't like what they say. I don't like who they are. I don't like what they believe. I don't like what they do. I don't agree. I feel like they're off the path. I. So I'm going to play bureaucracy. I'm going to say we don't have any funding for that. I'm going to say we ran out of funding. It technically is true, maybe. And technically, I also know I can bend it because we do it when we want to do it. I'm going to withhold. I'm going to give them the trash of options. I'm not going to say that, but I'm going to do that because I don't like this person particularly. I don't like the way they look, the way they sound, the way they talk. I don't like that they voice how they feel. I don't like that they're not afraid to assert themselves. And so I'm going to passive aggressively exert my bullying via withholding and via providing the dirt of the dirt. Okay, I want to give them an option. I'm just going to give them a trashy option so that I can still look like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but I also get to have a semblance of control, and I also get to teach this person a lesson because I don't agree with them. And if they don't kiss my ass and if they don't change their ways and start talking how I want them to talk, thinking how I want them to think, believing how I want them to believe, then I'm gonna withhold. That's abuse. And I know many won't agree with that, but I'm not looking for the validation. Because those presumptions, those projections. You see how I didn't say anything to do with actual good or bad or, you know, the realness of life. You know, you got people, like I say, you got people out here pedophiles, man. You got people out here cold pedophiles. You got people out here in these here streets doing some cold, wicked, whack stuff, and they may very well claim the religion. You know what I'm saying? So, you know what I'm saying? Behavior. Violating folks like my son, but they got a cross around their neck. They're insensitive to him, laugh at his kind, mock him. Just stupid. Don't know what these folks done been subject to, and they just sit back and mock. They don't know. Listen. These are forms of bullying and abuse in a covert, passive-aggressive fashion. You have people that are cyber bullies. They troll your social media, and then they execute their passive-aggressive bullying behind the scenes, depending what positions they have. Folks who have gone through stuff horrific that people can't seem to stomach and swallow, and some of us at the hand of our families, and folks just want to go around telling people just forget all about it, while there's no real remedies for things. Denial of abuse is abuse on top of the abuse. Further, to be in the moment, you know, since we do talk a lot about getting over the past and moving on, that's exactly what these survivors be trying to do. And in those moments, they still are dealing with ignorance. They're still dealing with people that's looking for validation from them. They're trying to gain their bearings. They're still dealing. And the abuse culture tells us to just pile on and keep on trucking and all that stuff. That's toxic. That's why some of us end up with the health conditions we end up in because of this. It's toxic. It's insensitive. Some of us ain't looking for now no more testimonies. I have to say that as well. Some of us just want to live our lives and want justice and don't have a problem with attempting to co-create that justice with wisdom and practicality. And wisdom and practicality include addressing issues, not over spiritualizing it or over religifying it or any such things, excusing behaviors, none of that. We all, whoever you all are out there, if you ever hear the video, you're a person and your children are people. You don't owe anybody homage. Ignorance at the end of the day. You have a right to be and explore, and that should not be taken away from humanity and decent behavior should not take that away. And if it's taking it away, it's an implication that it's not you, it's them. Because if you are a good person, and if you are honoring life, yourself, and other people, and you're not out here crossing lines and boundaries and out here on some sicko wacko shit, pretending to not be out here on some sicko wacko shit. You know what I'm saying. But I did a video earlier that may serve. This video is just to help some of you understand. The video I did before this one is to help you to navigate it. This is how we find out. Vulnerability is exploited. That's abuse. I don't care what umbrella is coming under. Well, they're going to have to be forced to hear what I say. They're going to be forced to have to undergo. None of us want that. Think about that. Anyway, gotta go.
Sorry for interrupting.
Got easy?
Yeah.
Okay. No.